Welcome to Xbox On. As we move into the dark heart of the spooky season, it's time to draw the curtains, turn down the lights, and get our scare on. And as luck would have it, a bunch of the most frightening titles known to mankind are now on sale.
We'll kick things off with one of this year's biggest horror releases, Resident Evil Village. Now 33% off, the latest Resident Evil game takes Ethan Winters on a jaunt over to a skin-crawling, creepy European village run by a group of aristocratic mutant overlords. Between the giant vampire ladies, ghostly puppet masters, horrifying mermen, and roving lycanthropes, it's a real one-star affair as far as holiday destinations go. Sadly for Ethan, his daughter is trapped somewhere within the village, leaving him with no choice but to press forward and explore every terrifying inch of it. Which sucks for him, but kinda works out for us, resulting in one of this year's most thrilling horror experiences. And it's especially great for Xbox Series X and S gamers, who can enjoy some lovely ray-traced reflections as they look frantically over their shoulders at whatever dreadful thing is chasing them this time around.
For another spooktacular discount on one of 2021's finest, look no further than Death's Door, which is now 20% off. Playing as a humble crow, it's your job to ferry souls between this world and the next. You're kinda like one of those helpful worker birds from the Flintstones, only you have to deal with a lot more corpses. But, it's a living. When one of your customers refuses to go gently into that dark night, you're forced to set out on an epic quest to set things right. Using your trusty bow and sword, you'll battle across all kinds of gorgeous, fantastical landscapes, which are all the more gorgeous in 4K on the Xbox Series X and S. And while many of the death-filled stories we take in at this time of year could leave you feeling a little glum, Death's Door is ultimately all about accepting it as a part of life, making way for new things to grow. Aww.
Little Nightmares is not a game that tells you an awful lot about its world. You know that there's a great big metallic vessel of some kind called the Maw, and that you're trapped inside it and would very much like to get out. And that's about it. Which leaves a lot of question marks, but fortunately, you'll find that they all seem to disappear once you're confronted with one of the game's bosses. Because when you're being chased down by a terrifying version of Mr. Tickle, the only question that really matters is, how can I get away from this guy as quickly as possible? Thanks to its outstandingly creepy character designs and the general sense of dread which pervades the whole game, Little Nightmares is a puzzle platformer like no other. You can have it haunt your dreams right now for only a quarter of the usual price, with a sublime sequel also available if you feel like you've got one or two nerve endings that aren't completely fried.
Carrion is another horror-flavoured side-scroller, only this time you get to act as the predator rather than the prey. About time. Set inside one of those mysterious science labs where bad things always seem to happen, Carrion puts you in control of an amorphous red blob and leaves you free to rampage through the facility, terrorizing its inhabitants as you go. You can silently creep along the ceiling before dropping down in front of your petrified target, or send them flying across the room with the flick of your wriggly red tentacle. And as you gobble up more and more unfortunate foes, you'll find your DNA mutating to unlock even more gruesome abilities to play with. If you want to be on the business end of the scares this Halloween, Carrion is the way to go, and it's now down to 40% off and available on Xbox Game Pass.
Hello Neighbour deals with a horror that's much closer to home. Far too close to home actually. When your next door neighbour, Mr. Peterson, starts acting suspiciously, you take it upon yourself to sneak into his house and uncover the truth. Avoiding detection will be harder than it sounds though, as the game boasts an AI that learns from each of your break-ins, devising even more devious traps to catch you out with. Hello Neighbour is now 35% off and is now available on Xbox Game Pass, with a sequel in the works that looks set to pit you against an even more devious evil. Now is the perfect time to start working on your neighbour evading skills. And for all the latest news on Hello Neighbour 2 and all the other awesome upcoming games on Xbox, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Not Mr. Peterson's bell though. Leave that one entirely unrung.
If one of your nightmares had a nightmare, it might look a little something like The Evil Within. You start off by heading out to investigate the mass murder that took place inside of a mental health facility, so things are already pretty unnerving. And then a monstrous fellow with a chainsaw comes charging towards you, and it only really gets stranger, more surreal, and more terrifying from there. But if you do manage to press on in this haunting third-person survival game, you'll slowly uncover the story of a brilliant child, a broken family, and a scientific experiment gone horribly wrong. The Evil Within is the sort of game that makes you never want to turn the lights off again, but on the bright side, it is available on Xbox Game Pass and it's now 50% off, so you'll be able to afford those increased energy bills after all.
If Psychonauts 2 has you craving more of Double Fine's unique brand of dark humour and bizarre personality, you might want to take a trip back to their classic afterlife adventure game, Grim Fandango. A noir detective tale set within the land of the dead, Grim Fandango is every bit as weird as it sounds and then some. You play as a skeletal schmuck named Manny who works at the Department of Death, helping to make sure that everyone is given the afterlife experience which they deserve. However, it turns out to be a whole good place situation where the whole system is actually totally unfair. And with no Kristen Bell here to save the day, Manny is just going to have to do it himself. You'll find the remastered version of Grim Fandango on Xbox Game Pass alongside both Psychonauts games, and you'll also find it down to half price in honour of the spooky season.
If there's something strange in your neighbourhood, who are you going to call? The Federal Bureau of Control, because they have the equipment, training and expertise to effectively deal with precisely this kind of paranormal situation. Okay, so maybe that doesn't make for a particularly catchy song, but it does make for one of the trippiest, twistiest adventures you'll likely take on this Halloween. Playing as Jesse Faden, you'll be investigating all kinds of supernatural occurrences and strange happenings, while also trying to get to the bottom of your own brother's mysterious disappearance. The Ultimate Edition of Control is now 60% off, and for Series X and S players, it really is the only way to go, with 4K resolutions, 60 FPS frame rates, and ray-traced reflections, all working to make the game more disturbingly lifelike than ever before. But if you just fancy checking out the Standard Edition, you'll find that on Xbox Game Pass.
Of course, at this point, maybe you're getting a little sick of being stalked and surrounded by the forces of evil. Maybe you'd like to bring some Scourge of your own. In which case, I have just the game for you. Scourgebringer, which is now half price, is a fast-paced 2D roguelite with a deliciously retro pixel art style in which you play as a deadly warrior named Kyra, who might just be humanity's last hope against the evil entity which has risen up to destroy it. And to be fair to the entity, we probably had it coming. Still, Kyra is here to slash and bash her way from one chamber to the next, tearing apart ancient machines in search of a way to put things right. With tons of mysteries to uncover and a satisfyingly visceral brand of combat, Scourgebringer is the perfect game for when you feel like turning the tables on the forces of evil.
Finally, we could not let October go by without shouting out one of the greatest horror games of all time, Bioshock. If you've never taken a ride down to Rapture before, you can do so now for 60% off. And even if you've been here plenty of times before, it's sure to find new ways to terrify you all over again. This iconic first-person horror game introduced us to an underwater world designed to set humanity free from the laws, taboos, and customs that held it back up on land. It was supposed to be a place in which a person could become anything they wanted. Sadly, it turned out an awful lot of them wanted to become genetically mutated, homicidal maniacs who could shoot lightning from their fingers. Who knew? Just as movies like Halloween, The Exorcist, and Friday the 13th remain staples of the spooky season decades after their initial release, Bioshock is a horror classic whose creepy atmosphere and nerve-jangling action make it utterly timeless.
If you get tired bobbing for apples and fancy a Halloween game that doesn't involve damp fruit, any one of these should guarantee you a blood-curdling good time. Let us know which one you'll be bracing yourself for this year in the comments, and don't be afraid to like, subscribe, and ring the bell before you go. Bye!